What is IUL and how does it work? Welcome, this is episode 7 of our Secrets to a Tax-Free Growth series. Now that we've gone a little deeper into the key differences between fixed and variable universal life, we're really going to be able to pick apart indexed universal life. If this is your first video in the series, welcome. My name is McCluskey. I help people bring peace to their finances by opting out of market volatility. If you want to follow all the way along, which I highly recommend you do, link will be in the description to the full series. Start there. All right, let's get started. IUL stands for Indexed Universal Life. So first, what is universal life? We took apart this a little bit in our last video, but what universal life allows us to do, essentially it's a form of life insurance that has many different purposes, hence the term universal. So some people will pay a lower amount of premium for the most amount of death benefit, and then others, when primarily what we're teaching in this series is we will pay the most amount of premium for the least amount of insurance, hence allowing that money to grow tax-free, and therefore we can use that while we're living. And then we have the indexed portion of the term IUL. So what is indexing? Indexing is a strategy where we take the fixed rate that they otherwise would have paid us. So in a fixed universal life, we learned last episode that they had a fixed rate and they would pay us or credit that to us each year. What indexing does is it takes that money that they would have just credited to us and it goes and puts that money into upside options, hoping that we can get a higher return than just the fixed rate. Now we're going to get into that a little more here in a second, but first a little history. So universal life was established in 1980. Indexed universal didn't come out until 1997. Essentially what was happening is in that first decade, say 1980 to 1990, is we had a high interest environment and the fixed amount that they were able to credit from 1980 to 1990 was high, a lot of the times even double digits. So people were just getting these fixed universal life policies and they're earning double-digit returns, which is essentially guaranteed by the fixed rate. So the insurance company says, hey, we're going to credit a, let's say 10% rate. And if you just buy this policy and put all of your money in that fixed account, we are going to credit you 10% each year and that's going to compound. Well, in 1997, eventually they realized these fixed rates are going to come down, but they still want to get good returns so people can still use this product as a vehicle for their future. So what they say is, how can we, with fixed rates, let's say going to 4 or 5%, still perform similarly to how we did before? So they say, okay, we have a fixed rate of 4 and 5%. So let's say you have $1 million in cash value. We're going to give you $40,000 or $50,000. Instead of just taking that $40,000 or $50,000, putting it in our account and letting it compound, like we kind of went deeper into last video, can we do something with that $40,000 to $50,000, put it in some type of vehicle, buy an upside option to where it could grow more, hence indexed universal life is born, where we are putting that $40,000 to $50,000 somewhere by linking to an index fund. Our money is not in the index fund. We are linking to it, trying to get a higher return than just the fixed rate. Now that's subtle but key. A lot of people get confused calling IUL an investment or saying that money is going into a mutual fund or into the market. That's not actually true. The money is being linked to it or tied to the index. We'll get into that a little bit more here soon. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into how the indexing actually works. Now again, you get credited a fixed amount. We're just going to say it's 4%, which is $40,000, assuming you had $1 million in cash value. So the insurance company, if you want it, they're going to give you $40,000. You can keep that, and then you can let that $1,040,000 continue to compound. That would be a fixed universal life. With the index, instead, we're going to buy an upside option. Now, keep in mind, let's say it's the S&P 500. We are only buying that upside option with the $40,000. So if that option expires worthless, meaning the market goes down, so the S&P 500 goes down that year, 5%, 10%, 40%, it doesn't matter, your million is still in the cash value. So even if they lose, you're still protected. Now let's say the S&P 500 went up 10%. That 40,000 would then reflect a 10% gain of your 1 million, turning into 100,000. So that 100,000 is credited back into your account. You now have 1.1 million in cash value, which makes sense because you did a 10% gain in the S&P, the index that you were linked to. Keep in mind, none of your $1 million was in the market or at risk of market loss. This is why it's not in the market or in a mutual fund. It's linked to it. Now you have 1.1 million in cash value without risking anything. Is this starting to make sense? So one more time really quickly, you have the $1 million. They credit you 4%. That is 40,000. With that $40,000, instead of keeping it in your fixed account, you go and buy an upside option with a chance to make more money on that $40,000. If the market goes up, your option will reflect that. If the market goes down, the option expires worthless and you still have the $1 million. Now, yes, there's fees. We are going to get into those a little more in detail in our future videos, but essentially this is how the IUL functions. This is how people say, if the market goes down, I don't lose, because we're only putting at risk the money that they would have credited us as a fixed amount on our 1 million. And that is starting to scratch the surface of why IUL can be so powerful. Stay tuned, there's plenty more to go into. Now we're gonna go into not only how when you make that 100,000, not only was your million protected, but now that you have that new 100,000, that actually becomes newly protected principal, meaning that new 100,000 that you just gained no longer can be lost. That's what's called locking in and resetting. We're gonna get into that in episode 8. I will see you there.